With live service games being looked at more increasingly as a dangerous money waster, the gaming industry will scurry back to its other vegetable of safety: single-player, Skinner box, copy-paste job, open-world snooze fest that lure you in with a setting or bold claims of role-playing in an immersive open world, only to be met with copy-pasted icons, brain-dead puzzles, and uninspired enemies haphazardly splattered across a map that is as wide as an ocean and as deep as a puddle. Why, yes, I am talking about Hogwarts Legacy. I got bamboozled into buying it, out of curiosity and boredom, and it had the same Watch Dogs Legion problem, where I saw the potential in the premise, the marketing, enjoyed my open hours with the game, and even somewhat into post-early hours in this game. But to my dismay, I was met eventually with a fairly bog-standard open world propped up by an unfortunately mediocre combat system that just kinda gets repetitive in very short order once you have seen what every spell, or in the case of Legion, agent can do. Both of these games I hit approximately 20 hours of playtime and fell off due to boredom. Legion was as bland as dirt after the initial appeal worn off, and unfortunately, in a world as rich as with lore and creatures as the Hogwarts one, it's very disappointing to find that fighting anything boils down to spamming different color bolts at mostly different spiders, goblins, and dark wizards that don't dramatically have much more different effect in combat when it comes to their use. That being said, a few games do get this right, like MGS5 and Breath of the Wild are examples of open world games with vast tool sets that reward creative play just by nature of having highly interactable sandbox elements. Too many games these days are de facto open world without real consideration of if that experience is really the best one suited. I would go as far to say that MGS5 and Breath of the Wild qualify as immersive sims set in open worlds, with heavy emphasis on player freedom from the initial design doc, making the toy box of mechanics justify that open world structure. It was number one in these developers' minds, a philosophy too many open world games lack. The way I see it, the games industry has three hats from which it pulls increasingly dead and decaying rabbits called game design, with the most decayed being the bland open world from what we might amusingly call the old hat, and the least decayed being from the hat where some of those rabbits are still squirming and begging to be put out to pasture. This hat is where all of the live service games that fail to capture an audience are stored. And somewhere in the middle are these remakes, and while some of them are undoubtedly good games, I'm going to be a lot harder on a game if it's a remake, especially in the case of games that are all-time classics. I just find the idea of remaking something that people already love to be nothing more than pure nostalgia bait, leading to guaranteed sales by brand recognition and member berries. I played the Dead Space remake, and I was warm on the game, but not exactly hot. Because while it certainly is a well-made game, my cynical brain keeps saying one thing to me, and it basically boils down to while I won't deny the level of fidelity and faithfulness to the original game is good, it is essentially the same game as Dead Space 1 with minor changes. And the developers of the game had a perfect blueprint already laid out for them, and while again, you can tell the team really loved making it, it still cannot be a truly excellent game in my opinion for one reason. It's creatively bankrupt and safe. As much as live service games drive me to insanity when I try to join a new one, as I grapple with years and years of feature and content creep, at least some of those games might be an original concept. The only remakes that really should be focused on are remakes of games that are outright terrible, black sheep, or even just so slightly misguided with an interesting enough concept that if handled by another studio, or in a lot of cases, given the proper time and budget or creative control to actually bring that game to its original vision, it might now be something not only worth talking about, but amazing. In the case of Dead Space, I think that 2 should be skipped with the remake treatment. Motive need to skip and move to Dead Space 3, rip everything away from Dead Space 3, make an entirely new game for all I care. That trims the fat and focuses on horror, and removes Carver and co-op, and calls that Dead Space 3. Reverse course on the universal ammo, and de-emphasize limb-based damage. It's not going to happen. Dead Space 2 is a great game, and it sold well, and it's already set up to be the easiest W of a remake job, if Motive takes it. And they will. And I'll keep begrudgingly playing them, and lamenting the idea that no good game goes unsullied, whether done justice or not in its disinterment from developer back catalogs. Creativity in the gaming industry is a an all-time low, at least in the AAA gaming sphere. Large companies are aiming to create games that consistently draw the dollars of every scholastic book fair patron, and spending-addicted trust fund debutante the internet has so aptly named Whale, or Shark if you play GTA 5. After all, what better way to equate levels of spending than to that of what fish needs to eat the most biomass to survive? Alas, the doldrums of the live service economy are fast approaching, if not already upon us. But the games industry has begun to trawl the ocean floor for consumers that really aren't there, damaging the whole ecosystem in turn. They have not seen the impact of the diver with the harpoon gun called apathy. While certain gamers have been already speared and reeled in by the likes of mega fisheries of Fortnite, Apex, Call of Duty, FIFA, and etc., there aren't enough fish left in the sea. How many live service games can exist in an average gamer's life? Time is a finite resource, and the first live service game that got my money was Team Fortress 2. First and last. I never got sucked into a game again, for better or worse, and I still play that one to this day. I don't need more games that'll nickel and dime me for everything I want to use, and most gamers feel the same way. Game companies have really created an interesting tragedy of the commons with us, the gaming public as the resource.